You haven't been trying to play this, have you?
Oh, my word.
Oh, dear. We are in trouble, aren't we? Just as when I turned up. You don't mind, do you?
Yes.
And I do feel you should have the correct explanation.
Oh, I see. You're both pulled to open.
Pulled to open?
Yes, and what do you do?
All quite simple. I am he, and he is me.
And we are all together, Goo Goo Kichu?
What?
It's a song by the Beatles.
How does it go?
Oh, please be quiet.
Here comes
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, the ongoing quest, the only ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the television series, in completely random order. My name's Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal, and Chris and I are a couple of journalists, a couple of guys, a couple of people who have been on a random journey for quite some time. And this time, there's only two of us, which might become relevant in a minute or two. But I'm going to let Chris bring everyone up to speed on where we've been lately so that you have the proper context.
There are only two of us, but maybe a third will appear on a video monitor in the background with a lot of glare on it. But previously on Pull to Open, 3 stories ago, we were with a certain doctor named Patrick Troughton, one of the greatest ever doctors, having fun on the moon with him in the Seeds of Death. 2 stories ago, we were at a doctor who's a little more debonair than Troughtonish fun. John Pertwee sipping wine and getting timey-wimey in Day of the Daleks, a whiz-bang season opener. Season 9 of the original show, in fact, that may become relevant. And then last time, we rocketed forward in time because the randomizer realized that it was Remembrance Day when we would be posting this episode, and I posted the only episode of the Doctor wearing a poppy and saluting the dead of World War I in Human Nature / Family of Blood. Then we took a little side trip to look at the original Star Beast, which, by the way, the day that we're posting this is coming up. We'll get to exactly when you can watch it in a second. But the randomizer rests for no Star Beast, and it rocketed us backwards again. And here we are with some more appropriate programming. Here we are at the 60th. We've now passed the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. So while every other Doctor Who podcast looks at the 60th anniversary, we bring you the 50th anniversary of the 10th anniversary. That's right, the randomizer has brought us to the 3 Doctors. The beginning of season 10. The big
setup.
Season 10 opener. Thank you.
Yeah, season 10 was huge, and we've actually done huge parts of it already. We have. As I recall, we've done Carnival of Monsters, which immediately follows the 3 Doctors, and a couple toward the end of the season, or, there was Frontier in Space. I think that's like midway through, as well as the Green Death. So This is it. We're rounding it out. Only Planet of the Daleks, I think, after this is the one, if I'm remembering my seasons correctly, is the one that we won't have ticked off our season 10 bingo card.
Indeed, and we're getting close to a bingo on the Blank Doctors. Because we have previously done the 2 Doctors. The randomizer has chosen to do the Blank Doctors in numerical order. So we did 2, now we're doing 3.
Oh,
the final one will be 5. There are no other ones, right? Well done, randomizer. We see the method in your madness. And also the fact that we did Carnival of Monsters before we did 3 Doctors echoes what the 5 Faces of Doctor Who, that famous series of repeats in 1981 did, where they gave us the Pertwee story for the 5 Faces. And then the next week showed us the Three Doctors. So,
okay.
If you were paying attention,
nice.
You might have wondered, why is the Doctor able to roam around now? And then suddenly he's given his freedom by the Time Lords in the next story. But yes, I have fond memories of the Three Doctors from the Five Faces of Doctor Who, and we'll definitely get to that.
Well, I hope we give for the folks listening even more fond memories once we start commenting on it, which, of course, you can fast forward to if you really want to. If you're just here for the commentary on the Three Doctors, the time code for when that commentary begins should be very prominent in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, just scroll down. But trust me, folks, you would not want to do that. We have lots to say about what is going on today. I probably should have opened up with happy return of Doctor Who, everyone. We'll talk a little bit about that. We have some results and poll to open about Day of the Daleks and a few other treats. So why don't you come with me here into the poll to open Pulse Loop?
Of course, Fetcher Damon.
Hey, folks, in case you're not sure, Pull to Open has a presence outside of your ears and your eyes if you're watching on YouTube. We are also on the World Wide Web at our own website. It is pulltoopen.net, and it is a place where you can subscribe, not just to the podcast, but to our newsletter. So we send out a newsletter every week with full notes on the stories that we comment on. We get some raw thoughts from us into that newsletter, and it actually covers some points we probably don't always get to in the podcast. So it's definitely worth a subscription, and we also occasionally will post other things. So it's a good place to check it out and support the pod. Another place you can support us is on Patreon. You can become a patron at patreon.com/pulltoopen. If you'd like to become a member, a patron, we would greatly appreciate it. And go ahead and visit us there.
Yes, indeed. And here's what we're doing for you in return. We do lots of these things out of the love of Doctor Who. Tonight, if you're listening to this on the 25th of November, on the day that it goes up on our various host services, then be aware that the Star Beast is coming. We now know what time it is coming. It is coming at 6:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.
Crash landing right then and there.
That's
outside
right.
Of Black Castle? Where is it again?
Black Castle in the comic books. Yes, we have yet to see to where Donna has moved. Wherever that is. No, I think it's pretty clear that it's London, it's Camden. We see, we see the Doctor in Camden Market in the trailers. Anyway, that is going up. The actual show is going up at 6:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. That's 1:30 Eastern if you're in the US. And we will have our commentary up as soon as we possibly can. After that, we're going to watch the show. We're going to get together. We're going to talk about it. By the way, we're going to do that with me here in Costa Rica, this is our first, well, not our first Pull to Open on the road, because I've previously been in the northeast of England for the Time Meddler and for Mark of the Rani. Go check out our podcast on the Time Meddler for some B-roll I took of the abbey where the monk was. But I'm going to be here in Costa Rica for a few weeks, folks, so that's where we're going to be doing the Star Beast commentary from. And,
so I feel like you should have told everyone you were secretly in a wildlife preserve in Buckinghamshire. I think that would have been a little more apt.
That's right. But I'm in some very secret unit facilities here, top secret, with no guard on the gate. Just come on in. But no, I'm here celebrating not just Doctor Who's birthday, but my own. I'll be here for a while, but thanks to the magic of technology, I'm able to join you all. And we were able to post our thoughts on the Star Beast. So
look at us bringing you guys amazing content week after week, no matter where in the universe we happen to be. Guys, this is a great reason for you to support the podcast in even another way, which of course is leaving a review for the show in whatever podcast app you're listening in. Apple Podcasts is a great choice, but you can also do it in things like Spotify and wherever else. You can leave a rating. A simple star rating would be great. Or if you like, you can read a whole review, and that review doesn't have to be all that long. You can just leave a few emojis, and what we really like is when you leave a few emojis in the form of a Doctor Who episode title. Those are super fun. They fuel our Humoji challenge, which will be back next week. But we could definitely use some more of those Humoji titles, so please go ahead and send them in.
Yeah, we've got so much to talk about this week that we're not going to torture me, as usually happens in the Humoji Challenge. I'm taking a week off because, of course, I lost the previous Humoji Challenge to one Stephen from Edmonton for Radio Free Scaro has taken home the trophy. So I need my Rocky montage moment where I'm just in the gym, like looking at Doctor Who titles while pumping iron. Yeah, so
you can go ahead and find that moment if you just go back to our Human Nature podcast. It was great. It was a great time. Steven swung by the pod. A good time was had by all. Definitely,
yes,
one to check out.
The Web Planet. I'll never forget the Web Planet now. But Spotify listeners, hey, if you're on Spotify right now, then poll to open, the poll to open that's at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead, look at it. Look at your screen. Look at our backgrounds. And then look at the poll at the bottom, pull it up, vote on it, vote on what you think of the Three Doctors, but also go check out our other podcasts because we keep our polls open. And we have some ratings now from Day of the Daleks from our previous Pertwee outing. And John Pertwee would like you to know the Three Doctors is definitely a John Pertwee joint. So let's hear what you had to say about Day of the Daleks. Pete, who won?
The Daleks reign supreme with 66.7% of the vote. That's pretty amazing. Way to go, Daleks.
I really missed my chance to throw it to you with report. We'll fix that in post. The Daleks got 66.7% of the vote. Well done, Daleks. A crushing victory over both the Viscount Banger and the Professor Hater, the only other two ratings to place. Amazing that nearly 17% of you thought that Day of the Daleks was a Viscount Banger. Maybe you really enjoyed the CGI version. We said it was a Dalek Hater hybrid. Or I said it was a Dalek Hater hybrid. That. Sorry, Pete. You said it was a full-on Dalek, so people agree with you.
Yeah, I was technically a Dalek hybrid. It depends which version you see. The original is kind of a run-of-the-mill lame Dalek, and the CGI one I really enjoyed, which more of an Emperor, more of a Supreme. So
a Dalek upgrade, if you will. But yeah, so that's our result. Please continue to vote, and please continue to check us out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow. We have some big YouTube news this week. Pete, what don't they know?
This time there's 1,000 of us.
Whoa!
Or even more now, because hey, we've got 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thanks very much everyone who subscribes there. It's definitely worth doing. If you haven't, please do. It really supports the podcast. And you can, of course, see us and all the Easter eggs we have in the background, get the visual jokes we might be referring to when we forget to describe them. It's just a great another way to support the pod.
Indeed.
And you can see all our shorts.
You see all our shorts. I'm going to say that the garden that you can see in the background is my homage to the scene in the garden with William Hartnell in The Three Doctors. That's
the Five Doctors, isn't it?
Yeah. Wasn't it? You see him briefly in The Three Doctors when the Time Lords.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, the little black and white. Yes.
Where they did the promotional photos. Anyway,
what was wrong with the color on the Time Lords monitor? We'll get to that.
They didn't pay their license fee, but yeah, we'll get to that. Meanwhile, yes, TikTok is another place that you can follow us, where we have more than 11,000 followers. So catch up, YouTube. You can listen to the podcast on the app right here. You may even be watching us right now on TikTok.
Well, listen.
Which, God bless you if you are.
God bless you indeed. We're also on all the socials, of course. We're on Twitter /X, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, all at Pull2Open63, and also on Blue Sky at Pull2Open. All right, folks, it is the return of Doctor Who tonight. That's really exciting. And now we here in the past, we've just found out when that's happening precisely, which will be at 6:30 p.m. London time, I believe.
Right, indeed. So
yeah, it's going to be right. It's going to broadcast right then, and it's going to go to iPlayer right then. And I have to presume it's going to go to Disney Plus everywhere else right then.
Either
so that's going to be
Disney Plus, or it gets pirated, and Disney loses out the opportunity to get more subscriptions. So yeah, I'm going to say you can take that one to the bank.
Yeah, so 6:30 p.m. I mean, the only possible alteration of this would be it actually goes earlier to some parts in the world that are earlier than London time. So if you're like in Japan or Australia, might you get it earlier? Or would you get it more on the super late? I guess it wouldn't be late. It'd be like on the 24th.
It's a very good question. I know that the Australians are very concerned about the fact that it's moving from ABC to Disney Plus. So any bone that Disney
Dave
Plus
Kitchen talked about that.
Great. Yeah,
he was here.
Yeah, Disney Plus. Go ahead. Throw the Australians a bone. Give it to them a day early.
Well, then the pirating happens, right? So I think
the Australians
wouldn't
pirate anything. It's not like they're criminals.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, if working backwards from America, so if it's 6:30 p.m. London time, we're talking, what is it? We're on standard time now. So is that 5 hours?
Yeah, so 5 hours behind on the East Coast. That's 1:30 p.m. on the East Coast. Shout out for my Pacific peeps who are 8 hours behind. We're going to get it at 10:30 a.m.
My goodness, you lucky dog.
Yes.
I've got to wait till mid-afternoon on the Saturday after Thanksgiving to begin our family's watching of that special. And that is, of course, when we will watch it. And shortly after that, we will have some hot takes here on Pull to Open about the Star Beast. So we're jamming the randomizer for once. Since the beginning of 2021, I want to say, we have been on a random journey every week, apart from occasional side trips. But this is the one time we're going to be doing hot takes on the contemporary broadcast of Doctor Who, which we haven't done since Jodie Whittaker's Series 12.
Regular listeners know also the randomizer is a cruel and capricious god. So we will, of course, be adding the Star Beast to our codex that the randomizer chooses from. Now, the randomizer can still choose the Star Beast for us the following week. So maybe it will trap us in Beep the Meep territory, and we will have to have done 3 podcasts, count them, 3 podcasts on the Star Beast in the space of a month. But if we're stuck there, we'll have to do it. But yes, so that's coming up. More news that we've just learned from the mouth of Russell T Davies, who has said that there are going to be no Daleks or Cybermen in Ncuti Gatwa's first season.
He didn't say anything about the Pteroleptals, though. So we're still holding out. There might be Pteroleptals in the first season. We'll see.
Yes, there are dozens of Pteroleptals fans out there. Dozens. But you know what? That's a classic first season thing, isn't it? And by the way, we are going to be calling it season 1 now on Disney Plus, I believe.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. I mean, as a Disney Plus show, I sort of feel like it's that influence. I forget what Davies said exactly about this. I'm sure he's totally down to do this, like this sort of reboot. The problem is, and I'm sure he's a Doctor Who fan, he knows the problem, which is that, well, there's already a season 1 and it was broadcast in 1963. Yes. 64, but
are we going to have to refer to it as New Who?
Right.
Or newly old Who, since so many viewers are now viewing it as that thing they grew up with.
Surely there's a third word we could have used. Like there's season and series, which is sort of how you generally differentiate the two. But if you wanted to sort of reboot and start again, isn't there like what else could you use? A grouping?
Grouping. Very special episodes.
Volume 1.
Ooh, volume 1. I like it. Sure. That is very Disney. They use the volume for The Mandalorian and series like that. It's named for their special effects. Yeah. So that could work. Okay. All right. I'm calling it Doctor Who Volume 1.
We should probably respect those listeners and Perhaps cut to our commentary on the Three Doctors, because there's something I really want to get out of the way.
The way that we always start our commentary on a random Doctor Who adventure is with the segment we like to call TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, Too Long Doctor Who, where one of us takes turns to summarize the story in question in record time.
Wow,
and this week,
what sucker has that game?
Is that sucker indeed? Shall we toss for it? No, we shan't. We already have.
Not too late, Chris.
It's the dandy, not the clown. Or no, wait, it's the clown, not the dandy. Anyway,
no, you had it right the first time.
It is useful. Are you ready? Because you get 30 seconds to summarize each individual episode. So a grand total of 2 minutes for the 4-part Three Doctors. What do you think about that?
It's fine. Yeah, this is about 2 minutes worth of stuff. Again, as with every TLDW, as Stephen observed when we were doing Human Nature and the Family of Blood, it's going to be front-loaded with a lot of detail from episode 1, probably skip over a bunch of stuff in the middle and then wrap it up, because that's just how it goes. But, I'm really going to try not to do that. And again, I don't think there's too much here, but we'll see. There's certainly plenty of rabbit holes I could go down. I'm going to try to avoid them.
Last words. All right. We will be entering the Antimatter realm and giving you Pull to Open's official summary of the Three Doctors in 2 minutes, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, this balloon crashes on a wildlife preserve. It's got something about it that disappears people. They recover it and take it back to unit because it's being weird, and they realize there's this light thing that's attached that is a beam that's sort of going to a black hole or something. So what happens is this thing comes out of the balloon's container, and it's sort of this gel creature, and then these other gel creatures start to materialize all over the place around Unit HQ, and they start to disappear things. Like essentially every time they touch something, it just sort of goes away, and that includes Bessie and the wall of the lab and stuff. So what happens is they realize the Time Lords are in trouble. Separate from all this, their power is being drained, and all of it's coming from this black hole. So what they do is they get because all they can do to help the Doctor is send his earlier self, the second Doctor, to help him. And he's there in the TARDIS in Unit HQ. They also send the first Doctor to give him even more help, but the first Doctor is sort of trapped in a time eddy, so he can only talk to them through the TV screen. But regardless, they realize they need to go to where this light beam goes into the black hole. So the Doctor sort of sacrifices himself with Joe. They both get transported to this weird planet, which is actually Omega's realm, because Omega controls what this place, because it's an antimatter universe, and that's what's through the black hole. So what happens is they also turn off the force field, and because the Brigadier and Benton are in the TARDIS, everyone gets sort of transported to this Omega world, and there's these gel creatures, and they realize Omega has sort of been driven insane by his isolation and being hurt in this antimatter universe, which has actually completely stripped him away. He's brought the Doctor there, so the Doctor will replace him because he can't leave without someone replacing him. But there's no one to replace. He's completely gone. When he takes his mask off, he's basically transparent. So he wants the Doctors to stay to keep him company. They agree to help him only if they sends everyone back. But there is actually a piece of matter still in the TARDIS force field, and they get Omega to knock it over. It blows up. The antimatter universe is destroyed. Everyone gets instantly transported back to Earth, and the Time Lords forgive the Doctor for help because they helped him out, and his exile is over, and send his earlier selves back to their time streams.
All right, 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and good job. Yes, there does turn out to be more to this, and we did once again fall down the rabbit hole of the opening that goes precisely nowhere. But good job. I will.
The wildlife preserve and crap. Yeah.
The wildlife preserve. Yeah, I will. The one thing I feel like I want to say in the voice of Patrick Troughton is, it's not a piece of matter. It's a recorder. Yes, but the second Doctor's recorder plays a big role in this. All right. Yes. Well done.
Was it ever? Thanks. I got it all in there. So it's the Three Doctors. Boom.
It's the Three Doctors. It barely even matters what happens. It's about seeing the dandy and the clown together, and the painfully old guy on the video screen, tossing barbs at them.
It's an exercise in nostalgia and fan service before people really appreciated what those things are. I mean, certainly nostalgia has been around forever, but in the context of a TV franchise, I mean, just think about when TV was invented even, right? Like it wasn't really mainstream until the 50s. And at this point, it's really only like 20 years or so of TV there actually is in terms of the sort of common lexicon. And this is sort of when, hey, maybe we bring stuff back and people who were watching things 10 years ago can appreciate what we're doing now by, having it reference itself. How about we try that?
I mean, it is arguably the first piece of fan service, literal fan service in Doctor Who, maybe in anything. Ever, right? Because what else had been on for long enough? Star Trek was cancelled after 3 seasons. It
was in reruns at this point.
Yeah, you could say it was fan service to bring Star Trek back because they were answering, for a 3rd season, right? When they had that letter writing campaign. But this was one where Barry Letts, the producer of Doctor Who in the Pertwee era, had fans say to him for years, it'd be a great idea, put all 3 Doctors together in the same show. And he's like, no, that's ridiculous for many years. And then needing a whiz-bang season opener for season 10, having the 10th anniversary. Although we should say this did not go out. We celebrated the 10th anniversary a little prematurely at the beginning of 1973.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no real 10th anniversary. This is sort of technically it. But it actually started screening at the end of 1972. It was kind of almost a holiday special. Right. New Year's special, more than anything else. So it's got that fan service element to it. It's like, this is fan service. Like, it's not that big a deal.
Well, and it's funny, like all the classic Who, honestly, all the multi-Doctor stories, if you think about it, are never, and I want to just qualify this, like I do like them all, and I think they're all of varying quality, and it's always good to see more Doctors, but it's never fully what you want it to be. And how could it be? But in this case, the obvious thing is Hartnell, right? He's obviously the weak link because of his condition. He was not well, definitely sort of in the waning years of life. He could only be on screen because he couldn't just come to the set. He just couldn't function at that level. And so what they ended up doing, how this all got started, is like Barry Letts had called him up and apparently got him on a good day, according to his wife later. And he agreed, totally, I'll come back for the show. And then after they'd sent out publicity, after they'd planned around it, like essentially had arranged everything, like his wife calls back and is like, look, I know he told you he could do it. He can't do it. Like, he just can't. Like, he's not in a good condition. And so they figured out a compromise, though. They figured out, okay, if he's just on a screen, if we just, drive him to wherever he needs to be in front of a camera and have him read lines from a card, he'll be it. Yeah. Which, again, we'll take it. Like, as fans, that's fine. Like, I mean, it's too bad, though, that he can't be there interacting with folks. And then, obviously, in subsequent appearances, they had to recast him, which works really well. But like I say, like 3 Doctors, 5 Doctors, and even to a certain extent, like the Day of the Doctor, you don't get fully what you want, because in Day of the Doctor, even though it's an amazing show, and in our Hot 100, it's number 1, you still don't have Eggleston. You really wanted to see him, and you wanted to see all the new Who Doctors, but they couldn't quite do it. And again, that's just the reality of making TV. You work with what you have, and they worked really well here.
Yeah, and Day of the Doctor, perfect example. Like, don't have Eccleston, invent a new Doctor. Can't put William Hartnell on the set. You put him on the screen. Like, have him get trapped in time. Again, we'd see it again for the 5 Doctors, right? Can't get Tom Baker. Oh well,
exactly.
A little bit of Sharda on the cutting room floor. Let's use that.
Yeah. Use a wax figure for the publicity shots.
Indeed. Oh God, that Madame Tussauds figure. Shame they didn't use the Meglos one, really, for that. But we'll get to that when we get to the 5 Doctors. Meglos!
And it's kind of okay here, because what you want to see, what really, really works, is the Troughton-Pertwee dynamic. it almost doesn't. I mean, it occurs to you certainly because Pertwee went in a different direction. The show went in a different direction when he took over, but you kind of forget almost like, oh yeah, he's really different from the Second Doctor, just in terms of a character. And they play that to the hilt. And apparently it was like, even on set, there was not quite tension, but there was a little clashing of styles between Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee, which comes out in the best possible way here.
Clashing of styles, and one might almost say a clashing of an ego. That ego being Pertwee's. So this invented the multi-doctor story, right? And we can, it's kind of a mess in the way it's sort of like Patrick Troughton just appears in the TARDIS, right? Like just his hand appears to pick up his recorder, and like, oh, he's just there. Like they've never done that again.
And it's funny that he's not bewildered at all by what's happened to him.
Yeah.
Like you feel like someone's carefully explained to him exactly how this is going to go and exactly where he's going to appear and what to do, which is, again, you don't care because he's just a delight. Like as soon as he shows up, everyone's just beaming like, oh my God, he's there.
So
and he's the Doctor again.
Troughton was happy to come back. He and Barry Letts were old friends, so he was happy to come back. Pertwee, they had to go to him and he had to get assurances that it would still be his show. And here's the point to which Pertwee was kind of insecure about this. In the script, he is Doctor number 1, not Doctor number 3. Hartnell is Doctor number 3 in the script. He's Doctor 1, right? So he also got a veto on companions coming back because I got to say, this is given we talked about this at the Seeds of Death. My little crush on Zoe, on Wendy Padbury. Zoe could have come back for this. But for the fact that Pertwee thought that would be too many returning companions and it would take attention away from his era. We could have seen Zoe in color. Thanks, John Pertwee.
Well, I will say the thing is, and we see this with the 5 Doctors later, once you start bringing back people en masse, like the roles get thinner and thinner and thinner to the point where some of the people they brought back for the 5 Doctors are literally not even their own characters. They're just ghosts that are essentially cameos, which is fine to some extent. But it is like, if you're bringing back Zoe as well, then you have fewer lines for everyone else and you need more for her to do at some point throughout. And what do? Do you get rid of the Alice character? Do you get rid of the Tyler character?
Please.
Maybe.
Yes, please.
Well, yeah. We can get to that. That's a good point. But it is a bit, you'd have to sort of rework it in a bunch of ways. And then you also have to explain, like, where's Jamie, right? Because they were together the entire time.
Well, so good segue to the other potential returning companion, Jamie. Fraser Hines. Right. They reached out to Fraser Hines. The role that Sergeant Benton plays in this is basically almost all of Jamie's lines, and Benton and Joe Grant get a little close. There's some, there's some hand holding going on. There's some "let me protect you, Joe"-ness to it. That was a reflection, perhaps an echo of the fact that Jamie and Joe were supposed to have a little bit of a romance.
Nice.
Which would have been fascinating. Love to have seen that. So again, we're denied, not by Pertwee this time, but by a British soap opera called Emmerdale Farm, which is what Fraser Hines was doing at the time. Now, I grew up watching, or rather, my Nana grew up watching Emmerdale Farm, and it was the most depressing thing I think I ever, like the theme tune and the really cheap
not
sets.
Intentionally depressing. It was just depressing because it was
depressing to me, and now it's like even more depressing that Emmerdale Farm is what stood in the way of bringing Jamie back to Doctor Who for the 3 Doctors. Really would have made it. This is a story that, like, this is one of those stories that they tell in Hollywood of like, and the lead actor died and this happened and that happened. Just the production was plagued and cursed. Like, there's so much that had to happen to the original script, which was from Baker and Martin, the team that did The Mutants that we previously visited. It was actually after they did The Mutants, they were asked to come up with this story. they had this very elaborate thing about Death World, and the three doctors are going to be sent in to combat various iterations of death. Like, so that was where this started. Then it just keeps getting progressively downgraded to, oh no, we can only have one villain, and let's call him Ohm, because that's Who upside down.
Right. Yeah.
And that becomes Omega. And the sets that they had were much more elaborate than what we got. The gel monster was rendered in a way that apparently the crew laughed when they first saw the gel monster costumes in this. And a long time ago, I issued a challenge to the randomizer to take us to a bubble wrap episode. This would have been a good one because apparently the gel monsters were basically just covered in giant bubble wrap, and they couldn't fall over, because they because their bubbles would pop.
Interesting. Yeah. Man, those gel creatures. That's another reason to hate them. But it's funny. Yeah, you brought up Bob Baker and Dave Martin. And interesting fact, we have Bob Barker and Dave Martin bingo for Pertwee. So they went on to obviously write a bunch of stuff for Tom Baker's Doctor. We've only done one of that, which was The Invisible Enemy. But this is
what else do we need to get?
They did the Sontaran Experiment, The Hand of Fear, Underworld, The Armageddon Factor, and without Dave Martin, Bob Baker did Nightmare of Eden. So we got a ways to go before we get full bingo, but we do. This is the last Pertwee story that we have not done of theirs. So yeah, that's good stuff. Again, I think it does what it needs to do. It's too bad about some of that casting, although, when you get lemons, you make a little lemonade at least. So there is a nice moment where Troughton's doctor recognizes, or Benton recognizes that his doctor, and they have a neat little, hey, remember we were like going toe-to-toe with the Cybermen? Yeah, and you get those neat little moments. Like he gets the Corporal Benton, and then later they use that device in Modern Undead when they refer to Colonel Lethbridge Stewart. So like, all those ideas of, oh yeah, remember, it's just all stoking those nostalgia feelings again and again. But yeah, it is interesting.
And speaking of things that would be used again and again, Troughton also gets that awesome line that we've seen repeated. We've seen it in Closing Time. We've seen it in Day of the Doctor. Oh, you've redecorated. I don't like it. It's so perfect for his mode of speaking. And we should say that's where a lot of the, we think of this as a given now in multi-doctor stories, right? That the doctors were kind of at loggerheads with each other a little bit.
Right.
And it's all because of this. And it all goes back to the fact that Troughton and Pertwee had very, very different ways of acting. Troughton was an ad-libber. He would change the line, and Pertwee was a perfectionist. He would learn all his lines, and so he would get thrown off when Troughton would change them at the last minute. He'd be like, I don't know how to react to what, and you can almost imagine this as a doctor versus doctor conflict, because Troughton said something back to him like, my dear fellow, perhaps if you just concentrated on what you were saying instead of waiting for what I am saying. Well, my Troughton impression is getting better over the years.
Not bad. I like seeing him there. Yeah, and then Pertwee would just go like, how do I know what to say if unless you're saying, I know what you say, or something like that. Like there was the little argument.
My dear fellow, how can I possibly know? I also, like, a lot of people have suggested that Pertwee kind of knew that he was going to be acted off the screen by Patrick Troughton, which he is. I'll also say that the Patrick Troughton that shows up here, a lot of fan editors have sort of described this as kind of an ersatz Second Doctor, like a different character called the Second Doctor, which is what he would go on to play in every other multi-Doctor story that isn't really the same as what we got in the 60s, right? There are just a few flashes of it.
Yeah, I'd say he takes a while to get his feel back, to fit the shoes again. I think early on in this, and particularly episodes 1 and 2 he doesn't feel quite like the Troughton we know, and that's especially apparent having just sort of come from the Seeds of Death a few stories ago. I do think he loosens up and gets much better and comfortable in 3 and 4, particularly for And that has honestly some of the best interplay between the two of them when Troughton is deliberately trying to annoy Omega and Pertwee's doctor has to essentially continually apologize for him. And you can sort of tell this is where that frustration that he had with Troughton's style is coming out for the better, in that, like, I'm sure that a lot of that exasperation he's displaying there is real, but it's great because that's exactly what he should be doing in the scene. And then, of course, it gives Troughton that great little moment of, yes, I'm being a complete tool right now, but I have a plan. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Like, it's kind of like, that was really, really neat. So very satisfying.
Very satisfying. And we do, just as we see the Doctors, actually, if you've seen the Three Doctors before, but you haven't seen it in a while, it's kind of interesting that there's not as much of that banter, the back and forth banter, as you'd expect. Like, there is more cooperation than you'd expect.
Yeah.
And that does also reflect the fact that they did kind of finally come to a agreement on, like, how to do this acting thing, which is that Troughton graciously agreed to do it Pertwee's way. Kind of acknowledge, look, you're the star of the show. And this would become much more acknowledged in later multi-Doctor stories, right? It's obvious the more Doctors you get, then, like, the Five Doctors, it's Peter Davison's story. Like, there's no question. Yeah. And he wouldn't have to feel insecure about that. But you can see, especially as Pertwee is starting to realize, like, oh, I'm not even going to be able to outact William Hartnell because he's not going to be on set. Like, it's just going to be me and him. So, I've got to establish my primacy here.
Yeah, no, you're right. And let's talk about Hartnell for a bit, because he comes on the screen again. It's too, like, you're delighted to see him because it's the first Doctor. It's really him. But if Troughton is sort of off a bit from his persona, like, Hartnell just comes across as completely almost a different person. Like, he's clearly reading the lines. He's looking to the side. Again, we're delighted it's him, but it doesn't really feel quite like the first Doctor. And it's made even worse by, the production values at the time. I think they just couldn't figure out, at least in the short period of time they had to make it, because they never have enough time to make the show, how to have it not be a live viewing of it, the actual video on the set, because it just doesn't, you get these bad reflections. It just looks muted. It just doesn't look good. It's already a screen on a screen, and usually in shows what they do is, they'll put it in post, right? And I don't think they actually did that here, because you can see sort of reflections and stuff like that. So it's just made a little bit worse by that. That said, it's still William Hartnell. He still has a couple good moments. He gets the dandy and a clown line, which is epic and perfect and delivered perfectly, even if his intonations might be slightly off. But it's now that's them. That is now the shorthand for the second Doctor and the third Doctor. Like, if you see any write up of them to people unfamiliar, that's what you get. Especially Pertwee. Pertwee, it's dead on.
Yeah, the dandy and the clown is perfect, and it definitely established this notion that the Doctors did. It's the first time of, like, looking back and saying, oh yeah, we have created these different personalities for the same guy. And look at them all here together. And yeah, with Hartnell, it's kind of like, you take what you get. I mean, so the background to this, William Hartnell died of arteriosclerosis. It's what he was suffering from on the set. Like, part of me, if I could jump in the time machine and go back and do anything to save his life, I'd be like, please, Bill, give up the booze, give up the cigarettes, and then at least you will be healthy enough to make it through 1973, and we can have a proper epic celebration of the show that you will be remembered for forever. But yeah, it was sad that on certain days, yes, the day that Barry Letts got him, he was in a good mood. It's also true that on certain days, he didn't even remember that he was in Doctor Who. And could apparently get quite distressed when fans would come up and ask for autographs, which is so sad. So yeah, he's reading off cue cards, and you kind of have to allow for that. And he's got a bit of a sort of a sickly sheen on him. Like, you can see that he's kind of sweating in under the studio light. There was a fan myth for many years that this was done in his garage, that he was not well enough, so, like, they just had to film it there. And you can believe it, right? It looks like it's just like, oh, we've just film this in the blackness of the garage. So maybe you kind of want the reflections on the screen, right, to kind of muddy that a little bit. Maybe that's why they didn't worry about it too much. It is interesting. I wonder what you think of this. I'm gonna shift from the sad behind the scenes to the intriguing headcanon that we have to issue here. The first Doctor and technically the second Doctor are still fugitives.
Right,
unless
exactly.
you're going to season 6B this, the Time Lords are getting 2 fugitive Doctors involved in the Doctor's own time stream, and there's no mention of it.
Yeah.
What do we do with that information?
Well, I think you also have to, it's very much related, attack the memories question and what sort of happens when he meets himself. And I think this is easily hand waved away by lines in Day of the Doctor where it's like timelines are in flux. I'm not going to remember this, am I? So I think we can take that to mean when the Doctor meets himself, generally only the latest incarnation actually remembers the things that happen. So there's that. Whether that's simply an effect of timelines being in flux or a deliberate erasing of the memories, which I would think is probably more likely when the Time Lords are involved. I think you have to do that. But I do think, it is a bit glossed over about when the Time Lords approach the earlier incarnations and transport them. And there's no like, well, it's nice to know I get to a point where I can rejoin my people at some point, but let's, that's neither here nor there. We got to deal with this Omega stuff. Like if there was a sort of a throwaway line like that, which is what you do today, right? Like a Russell Davies or whoever would probably have that scene. That's probably a mini scene within a scene of the realization of an earlier Doctor is like, wow, interesting. Okay, this is what happens to me. All right. There'd be like, you might even do an amusing sort of cut of like, let me bring you up to speed. And then just sort of this slow zoom out from the earlier Doctor. Ooh, wow. Really? The Cyberman? It's like, Adric? Wait, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And you've actually got me thinking about something that may yet happen. So we've theorized, and remember, we're recording this before the 60th anniversary specials. We've theorized that what RTD might be setting us up for is Ncuti Gatwa coming in early. Like having a multi-Doctor story, but like literally a Doctor from the future, kind of in the same way that Peter Capaldi was in Day of the Doctor, but more than just the eyebrows, If that is so, does that mean that the 14th Doctor will then lose all his memories? And only Ncuti will remember what is actually going on, which could be interesting, given that the 14th Doctor appears to not understand a lot about anything anyway.
The whole memory thing, I mean, the thing is we get worried about it as fans, and I think it's fine to hand wave away. I think you can have fun with certain lines that you could throw in. But again, and it all breaks down at some point because, again, you're right. If the future Doctor doesn't even remember what he did earlier until he experiences those things with his earlier versions, and then he has all the memories, I mean, that's the only way it works, right? Because otherwise they just know. And it's worth noting that in Time Crash, which throws all this off, right? There's the whole bit where the 10th Doctor remembers what he did as the 5th Doctor because he remembers the meeting. It's all like timey-wimey, certainly, but
and actually, even in Day of the Doctor, where they establish that the memories get wiped, you have instances of the Doctor getting an idea, and then the other two get the idea, like almost. Oh, I remember having that idea, So it's like a lot of Doctor Who canon. Like you can drive yourself mad trying to.
Yeah, I think what you need to do, to explain it for this specific story, there's stuff that happens off screen with regard to the Time Lords and the earlier Doctors, clearly. So when they get them out of their time stream, there's a little conversation, and it's like, we're actually not the Time Lords you're running from. We for future versions of those people, and now we need you. Again, Time Lord Society, you think there would be a lot of this happening, this sort of from the future and sort of timey-wiminess of it. But there's clearly laws of time. We could talk about that for a minute. They're violating the first law of time here, which is obviously a legal law and not a physical law because they violate it. So,
first law of time is don't cross your own time stream. Yes.
Yeah, apparently. And we see, I like it. It's a good rule because, and I think they've sort of dealt with this particularly with Father's Day. Father's Day to me works a lot because it violates all this stuff, and then things go absolutely wrong, and there is disaster with regard to time, and it almost swallows the earth based on dialogue in that story. So yes, do not violate your own time stream. But there's sort of a theory. I forget which book this is in, whether it's the Discontinuity Guide or one of these other sort of famous tomes in Doctor Who, that, well, violating the first line of time is a no-no, but if you're a Time Lord and you have entirely different sort of genetic structure, which you would need to completely change your appearance, maybe this is enough to sort of not endure the worst aspects of crossing over your own time stream, right? So you can meet your other self, just not the same self. So in other words, you can't have Colin Baker meet Colin Baker, but you can have Colin Baker meet Patrick Troughton. So and not have disaster or have a less of a chance of disaster. That's sort of the headcanon you have to attach to it.
Indeed, and you're sort of reminding me here, by the way, this is not Pertwee's first multi-doctor story, given that we've just been to Day of the Daleks, which features two Pertwees meeting each other.
Bingo card for that, I
guess. All Pertwee multi-doctor stories.
As long as you don't count Planet of the Spiders. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Good points, yes, and 5 doctors. So
if you count Regeneration stories as multi-doctor, which they're not really.
Yes. Well, okay. Let's catch up on the Time Lords as well. Okay. I like that idea about the genetic structure being enough to, and that maybe this sort of tells the Time Lords that. So in future multi-doctor stories, it's actually fine. Nobody bothers even saying it. Like the Doctor has pioneered this awareness that different genetic structures all you need. But the Time Lords, so they are in their kind of intermediate costumes. They're sort of half war games with those robes.
Right.
Or with the robeless, the capeless robes, right? And but now, like,
no funny hats yet.
has a cape. No funny hats yet. But yeah, so fashion on Gallifrey has definitely changed.
Let me tell you what my regard of the Time Lords in this story is with a question. Is this the worst depiction of the Time Lords or the second worst? What's your view?
I mean, there have been so many bad depictions of them, and I'm on record as really not liking a few of them. And I know you liked Arc of Infinity better than I did. I really didn't like the Time Lords in that. And here it's just sort of kind of inoffensive. It's just like one control room. With I guess the Time Lord President comes in, is the guy in the case?
I guess they don't have to be offensive. Yeah, I forget which one's the President and which one's the Chancellor, because you forget which one's the President and the Chancellor, because they're all just kind of these bland guys in robes talking to each other in a control room somewhere. I think, honestly, this is probably the worst the Time Lords ever get, because they are so bland and unmemorable. It's just a regular everyday. This could be this Bridge of the Enterprise, right? There's no, like, the sparseness of the war games actually worked really, really well to add, and we said this in the podcast at the time, to add to their mythos and their mystique, and they're godlike. And here they just, it could have been on a Buck Rogers. Who cares? Like, and they just got monitors and they, bringing stuff on screen. And to a large extent, I think that's a bit why they suffer in Arc of Infinity too. Definitely not one of the better ones, but I would put this one even lower. Like, it feels like this is almost a baby step toward what we later see in The Deadly Assassin, which sort of completely, grounds them and humanizes them, but in a very smart, politically astute way. Whereas here, they're just kind of like just another alien race doing whatever with screens and technology, even though the things they're talking about sound really fantastic with black holes and light speed or faster than light beams and whatever else they're using. You just feel like, I don't know, they're just air traffic controllers.
The black hole, by the way, the name for the original script of this was the black hole. which would have preceded the Disney movie by 7 years. But interesting, on the Time Lord front in the original script, there was supposed to be screens showing like the location of every single Time Lord in time and space. Which,
wow,
I guess they couldn't figure out how to do that. So the control
including the Master.
I guess so. Right. Interesting.
We'll be back 2 stories later. I
will say it is also interesting. The Time Lords really use, appearance and disappearance of stuff in this, like the Second Doctor just suddenly magically appears. But also, when they officially pardon the Third Doctor, there's no ceremony. There's no, reading of a scroll. There's nobody like, oh, here you go. Here's your personal possessions back. Here's your memories back. Whatever. No, just the dematerialization circuit. That's what
just
it is.
Appears. Yep, that's what it is.
Just
with the prongs. Yep.
And the Doctor's like, hey, I got my memories back.
Yeah. Well, this is, again, I will say, like, there's some cool, even though the Time Lords visually look really lame, there is a lot of cool Time Lord lore and even Doctor lore here, which is to say, well, a lot of it's a back read because he gets the dematerialization circuit back and he gets the sort of mental blocks he had for operating the TARDIS and the laws of time, I guess, all removed. So he can basically travel wherever he wants again, but even better, right? Because really up until the Pertwee era and this point, like the TARDIS was essentially a randomizer most of the time. It just sort of landed wherever it just wanted to, where he needed to go. And even again, recently we went to Seeds of Death. The Troughton explicitly says like, it's not really suited for pinpoint travel to just go to the moon, even though they seem to consider it, which suggests that maybe they do occasionally sort of go where they want to go. But this is great because you can get a lot of headcanon out of this. So you can interpret it a number of ways. I've seen it written that, maybe he always had a block on his, so there was some block since the beginning of Hartnell leaving that he didn't really know how to operate it. Or it was not a block. Maybe he literally just didn't know and, didn't study at TARDIS school well enough. And so the Time Lords actually gave him more than he had in the first place. But my read, and I think I've said this before, my theory, the headcanon I bring to it is that Pertwee actually used his time on Earth. Like with the Doctor grounded there for years was basically, all right, I'm actually going to pull out the manual. I'm going to study how this works and realize how to actually set coordinates and do stuff with this machine that he never did before. So when he got everything restored in this story, he could actually steer the damn thing. And he got better and better at that over time. And, we've seen those later Tom Baker episodes, where he goes, the TARDIS and I are getting rather better at these short hops.
I love that idea of the Doctor going to night school off screen. And it does make me think, I don't know if you watched Loki, the Marvel TV series that got very, very timey-wimey.
Just the first season.
It has just finished. The second season is the final season. Highly recommended. It is not a spoiler to say that at some point Loki has to go off screen and learn quantum mechanics and like time travel theory for centuries, and then comes back in the next scene having spent centuries learning it.
Wow.
It is fantastic.
I know Kung Fu. Does he say that?
No, it's sort of like the exact opposite of that, right? Just like, century. Okay, now I get it. So even though he's a god, it does take him a while, and kind of, the Doctor's a very low-key character himself, so it seems appropriate. But I want to just pivot.
Yeah, well, I want to pivot too. I want to pivot. I want to pivot to the end, Chris, which is, of course, the omega of this story.
Yes.
And how do we like it? How do we like Stephen Thorne?
Let me pivot to why I may always call the Time Lords Les Seigneurs des Temps, which is to mention my BritBox boycott. I feel like this should be a regular segment. Listeners know that I've stopped paying for BritBox because BritBox raised their prices, and I want to see how much of Classic Who, since that's all I ever watched on BritBox anyway, how much of it can I get from other sources? How long can I go before paying that monthly subscription again? Now, by the time you're watching it, it may be on Disney Plus, so this may all be irrelevant. But with this one, The Three Doctors is on dailymotion.com. If you go there, you can watch it for free. The only thing is that you will have to watch it with French subtitles on the screen. But I say that actually made The Three Doctors better. Because simultaneously doing like a Rosetta Stone thing here, learning French. And I will now never forget Omega saying, un seigneur de temps. And sorry, French people, I'm going to butcher the accent. Un seigneur de temps? Deux seigneur de temps? Ah, la même seigneur de temps. The same one. So yeah, there are certain French phrases I will not forget now, and there are actually several points in the script where whatever they're saying, like "let's go," etc., is translated as "allons-y."
That's perfect.
You have a 10th Doctor shout out in the 10th anniversary special if you watched on Dailymotion, because you'll see Pertwee saying allons-y.
Allons-y. That's amazing. Wow. I feel like David Tennant was watching this on Dailymotion, and that's how he got his catchphrase. It's all coming back. But those Omega moments must get, like you say, they really get punctuated, which they already are, with several exclamation points throughout, clearly.
Oh my goodness.
Man, is there a more yelly villain in Doctor Who history? He likes to yell. He likes his voice. He likes it at high volume. You might call it over the top.
You might. And it's kind of interesting. I was just reading the voice actor that they brought in to do Omega for this, next appeared in Frontier in Space as an Ogron. And I sort of feel like maybe that was a demotion because of his performance here. Because, it's so hard to see Omega in this as anything other than like the Kylo Ren of the Doctor Who universe. Like, he's a whiny teenager.
Yeah.
Totally. And he's solipsistic like a teenager. He's created his own universe in his bedroom. And it's just,
exactly.
But he doesn't have the imagination to like really conjure up much except a chair.
Well, don't forget the gel creatures. It's like, let's just have some blobs help me out. Like Green Lantern, he ain't. And the thing is, I don't want to slam him too hard. I do think it's appropriate for the script that he's kind of just this larger than life villain. He's very, very direct and says what he means and means what he says. And what he says is that he wants revenge and he can do anything he wants. And he also wants to go back to the Matter universe, where presumably he would not have powers, I guess. Like, he's a crazy person, so his motives change, and he's probably a little more direct. It makes his motivations make a little more sense in Arc of Infinity, and we said what we wanted about that story when it happened, because that's more of a plot. Whereas this, he's just more of a force that they kind of have to deal with. I got to say, he sort of slips on a couple of those later lines. It feels like when he goes like, "What do you do, huh?" At one point, like that felt like a bit of a slip. Like he says, like that's not as grand as I would expect in terms of a line. His wail at the end, I don't know. What did you think of that? I felt like it seemed a little too rehearsed to me. I didn't really have a lot of sympathy, even though he'd lost his body and everything.
Yeah, and it's also hard to watch when you know he's coming back. It's hard to have sympathy for Omega because there's just nothing sympathetic about him, and you could lean on his backstory. Like he is his was the blood, sweat, and tears the Time Lord Society is built on. Like, that's an incredible metaphor to develop for all of civilized society. The things we don't see, the people who get sacrificed. But
I think they've done more with that. They've done more with that in the books and the audios. There is a good adventure. It's just plainly called Omega. It's part of a villain series they did quite some time ago. And it sort of goes a little deeper even into his psychological problems and stuff. I'm not sure if I mentioned on the podcast before, but that adventure, by the way, also has one of the absolute best twists I have ever seen in Doctor Who, certainly in Big Finish. At the end of the third episode. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but there is a massive twist in the audio Omega that it is worth checking. And it's a cheaper one too, because it's an older Big Finish. So I would definitely encourage people to check it out.
Well, I'm certainly encouraged to check that out, and perhaps that's something we can put in the show notes as well, or on the website. We have talked about taking a side trip one of these days into our favorite Big Finish. I
definitely got to get that going. Yeah, definitely got to get that going sometime in 2024. That's a question we need to answer, but there are other questions we also need to answer, and those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. That was a very Omega line. Here's another question. The first one, it is, why did the randomizer take us here? I should do all of these in an Omega voice, now that I just realized.
Oh, God, no, I couldn't. I'd be hoarse in 5 seconds. No, I shall do all of the 4 questions, the voice of Patrick Troughton. No, really. By the way, Patrick Troughton will also be annoyed by the fact that recorder is constantly translated as flute.
He would
guy.
be, yes.
Poor guy. But yes, why did it bring us here? Because the randomizer is better than we are at being like seasonally appropriate. Like, first of all, like it took us for Remembrance Day, it took us to Human Age, A Family of Blood, which features a Remembrance Day featuring World War I. It's perfect for that day. And here we are at the anniversary. Just past the anniversary, and it's taking us back to the 10th, and it's perhaps kind of reminding us that Doctor Who was not always taken as seriously or was as big a deal, and we can still relax and have fun with the old wobbly sets.
Yeah, that works. By the way, if it's translating recorder as flute, what do they do in this scene where it's like, oh, it's not a flute, it's a recorder? It just comes across as like, it's not a flute.
It's something like, it's not a flute, it's a flute.
That's funny.
Something like, I don't think they translate it literally. I'll have to go back. We can provide the screenshot on the Pull to Open Twitter account. We'll look into that. I've screenshotted all of the Allons-y, so we'll be posting those. And we'll look into that as well. But yeah, so what else we got? Any other direct connections? I guess we've had a bunch of disintegrations in Day of the Daleks and then Human Nature, and here we have just disappearances, not disintegrations.
Yeah, you have the gel creatures who can't even really aim, and I don't think they ever actually shoot a person. And that person, no, they shoot some unit soldiers, I think, and I don't think they disintegrate. But yeah, I think I don't really have a lot to add to the anniversary thing. This is clearly, it's just too apt. The 10th on the 60th, it's an epic tale they're trying to do, and this was epic for the time. And a bit of a reboot at the end, right? So in this case, he's rebooted as the Doctor, the Wandering Galactic Adventurer, which they deliberately did going in. And they're clearly rebooting Doctor Who here on the 60th. It's going to take a little longer because, again, the show's bigger. They have more to do. So there's going to be 3 specials, but they're going to reboot. And we'll get a brand new Doctor and brand new stuff. Not much more than that in my view.
Might the randomizer also be giving us a spoiler that there may be more Doctors showing up in the specials?
Ooh, that question has put tingles in my feet, and they're going all the way up my body. But now it's wrenching my brain, and I have to go back to our questions, and I have to wonder, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so Omega's evil plot is he just wants the Doctor to keep him company?
Well, this is the thing. He says he wants revenge, and he's sucking the Time Lords dry of their energy. I don't think he can do that if he transfers, right? Because he wants his revenge. 2, he wants to transfer to the Matter universe and just leave where he is. But the only way to do that is to get the Doctor, or just someone to replace him, and he chose the Doctor because he's a Time Lord and probably can actually do that. He's probably capable enough as a Time Lord to sort of take over his antimatter universe. So does that presume once he's free in our universe, he's just going to get his revenge by some other means? Maybe. But then because he realizes he can't actually transfer, because there's nothing left of him, he switches it. He adapts. I guess this is the equivalent of Omega thinking on his feet. He's just saying like, oh, now you're just going to keep me company. Now, something to consider. Well, if he keeps both of them there, like, doesn't that mean Patrick Troughton never actually regenerates to John Pertwee? And then that doesn't work, right? And does he have to return Troughton?
It could be a Clara situation where you can kind of, Clara has to be returned after her adventures with me and their TARDIS.
Or a Mel situation.
At some point. Yeah. Speaking of timey-wimey companion situations. Yeah. So you could say at some point, like at the end of time, when Omega's finally sick of this double act, he's going to return Patrick Troughton so that he could become John Pertwee, and then John Pertwee can just amuse him on his own. Perhaps sing a few charity songs.
So here's how I reconcile this and how it could lead to the evil plot succeeding. So you have to assume, again, I always assume the last thing doesn't happen. So he doesn't knock the force field generator out of their hands. It doesn't blow up. And he actually keeps them there. But here's what happens. The Doctor is super smart. And clearly in the future, because Omega survives this, he figures out a way to transfer with biodata and actually get into our universe. Now, it doesn't work. And we talked at the time, we wondered whether that would have worked had the Doctor not interfered or whatever. But maybe the two doctors, or three, I guess, because they're all over there, just one's on the screen, they figure that stuff out for him. It's like, wait a minute, you can transfer. You just need biodata. And let's get you some, And so in other words, they cooperate. They figure out a way to get him in the universe, but also on the promise that you're going to have to go to rehab. You're going to have to go to therapy, and we're going to take you back to Gallifrey. You're going to be reviewed as a hero. It's going to be great, but you got to drop all this revenge stuff, dude. And so maybe that happens. He gets therapy and actually becomes a great leader on Gallifrey.
I love, my goodness, talk about a Big Finish series I want to see happen. Omega in therapy. The therapist like, I feel like you're hiding your true feelings behind a mask. Why don't you take that mask off and see what's it? No, I can't take it off. I'm invisible. Oh, you feel you're invisible. What does this say about how you feel? No, I'm literally invisible. I mean, it just writes itself. It's fantastic. Big Finish, call us.
That's awesome.
Or maybe RTD call us if you want to bring Omega back, because we do now have the Omega bingo. Yes.
We do. Yep.
And maybe not a bingo on Omega mentions.
No, he's definitely mentioned in many other places, particularly Remembrance of the Daleks.
By the way, while we're talking bingos, I really want to know if we've got a bingo on Beatles lyrics.
Ooh.
Because, of course, that line of Joe's where the Doctor says, I am he, and Joe completes the lyrics as you are, as we are all together. And Joe, I'm sorry, it's not cuckoo cachoo, which is her line reading. It's goo goo gajoob, and that comes at the end of the chorus. You just cut out the whole intervening line.
Okay, in fairness, there was no World Wide Web to look up any lyrics of any song anytime you wanted back in 1973. So, Katie Manning, you have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of.
Katie Manning had, like everyone else, I'm sure, a copy either of Magical Mystery Tour or of the Blue LP, which was the Beatles' later years stuff. There's no excuse for not having
I bet she had an autographed copy, in fact. So that's why she's great, among all the other reasons. And good question, no, about the Beatles bingo card. But the question we actually have to answer right now is, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald, of course, splintered in time at the end of The Name of the Doctor. She's somewhere in every single Doctor Who story. Where is she? In the three Doctors.
All right, so I had two thoughts for this.
Okay.
First of all, we've talked in the past about Time Lady Clara pulling strings behind the scenes. I would venture to say that she's the one who is materializing things in the Doctor's TARDIS. And maybe she's materializing that dematerialization circuit without a full authority, or maybe she's the one who goes to the High Council and say, "We'll let him off his exile now, right? Yeah. I'll send him the second. Yeah. Just sign here, and here. Thanks. Don't need to worry about it." Takes the paperwork off. Takes care of it. More interesting, I think, is that there may be an antimatter Clara in the antimatter universe, and she's Omega's ex, and that explains why he's such a moody teenager moping about in his bedroom. It's because she's dumped him.
She broke up with him. Oh, that would drive any man insane. Yeah,
that's right, and that sort of that just tips him over the edge into insanity, and maybe he's he's scrubbing his face with acne medication too much, goes invisible.
Those are good. I went with solving the issue, which seems so obvious when you look at it. Like, how the hell did that recorder get into the force field generator in the first place? It's in the console. Like, it's not good. You're not just going to drop it in there. So it seems obvious to me that she's on staff at Unit HQ, and at some point, she essentially just sneaks into the TARDIS and tosses the recorder in there. Why? Well, maybe she has some future knowledge or whatever, or maybe she thinks she's cleaning up. Who knows? But how else does it get there? It's like, does it fall through a grating in the console or something? It's just there, and it's like, okay.
I think, isn't there a very, very quick blink and you'll miss it scene where you see the recorder falling off? Or maybe I read that it's in the script somewhere. There's a blink and you miss it scene. They just didn't shoot it.
Yeah, that. I guess you could argue the Doctor's console is just full of holes and like it just falls through it. I mean, I guess it's like an old thing, but I mean, I like the idea of Clara playing a part here just because it's just so weird. I was like, oh, come on. It's just right there. That's weird. That is weird.
So we should mention Clara in the context of the fact that this is the first time anyone in Doctor Who says it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. That exact sequence of words. And ironically, it's in Pertwee's line, "Well, Sergeant Benton, aren't you going to say it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside? Everyone else does." Well, no, actually they don't. They never said it before. And Benton says, isn't that obvious? And Benton is kind of weirdly the one who just kind of takes everything in his stride here.
Yeah.
We didn't mention that as well. The Brigadier is the one who's confused by everything.
First time.
So maybe
he's in the TARDIS,
Clara is Benson's girlfriend in this at Unit HQ. And she's kind of talking to him all the time about these multidimensional concepts. So that it is just, so he's not going to have his mind blown. And he can help save the day. Right.
That works. That could work. All right. Good job, Sir Clara. You're either on dematerialization duty, you're Omega's ex, you could be on staff at Unit HQ, or you're Benton's girlfriend. Take your pick. But we got to take another pick here with the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that matters for the three Doctors. What did we think of this story? Pull to Open rating system has 6 ratings. There's the Dalek, which is for a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, which is for a not-so-good episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which is for a not-so-good episode, but at least we learned something. The Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. The Fixed Point in Time, which is a show that is beyond rating, something we can't rate for reasons of nostalgia sometimes, and occasionally for other reasons. Or The Lady Cassandra, which is an adventure with a paper-thin plot, but it looks good, especially with some moisturizing.
Well, I'm tempted to sort of throw away references to Cassandra in terms of the Gel monsters kind of are laughable, but they kind of look pretty. Like I like the mix of colors there. Omega's got some fun disco stuff going on in his realm. And of course, it's just beautiful to see the second and third Doctors together. I mean, look at the publicity shots of them and name a more iconic duo. I'll wait. They're wonderful. I could also say Professor Hater because we have a Professor Tyler of Wessex University here who almost seems like the prototype for Professor Hater at Darlington University, both made-up universities. And you might as well put Professor Hayter in this for all the good that Professor Tyler does in it. He's barely able to explain anything. But no, that's not my rating. And I'll tell you why. And I had to back up a little bit and talk about my introduction to Doctor Who, which was watching it with my dad. And my dad passed away last year. Regular Pull to Open listeners may remember, we've talked about a lot of Pertwee. Pertwee was kind of the doctor that he would watch, and then he passed on to me, and Baker was my doctor. Troughton was also his doctor. So he loved this one. And I so firmly remember watching the Three Doctors with him during the Five Faces repeat. Specifically, I will never forget the joke at the start where the brigadier asks the doctor, "What can I do?" And the doctor says, "Pass me that silicon rod." And it's passed carefully from person to person with perfect comic timing. And then the doctor uses it to stir his tea. That is, when I think of my dad laughing, I think of the laugh that he gave for that moment. It is, even though it happened in 1981, it is embedded in my memory. It will always be the first thing I think of for the Three Doctors, is the fact that it made my dad laugh in that very early scene. We'll never forget it. So it's a fixed point in time. It is the very definition of a fixed point in time in me. Like, it's a bad story. I don't recommend it. Like, if you're coming fresh, if you have no nostalgic associations, there are lots of reasons why this is just static. It doesn't feel like it works. It's not as bad as some people feel it is. Like, it's not an irredeemable ogron. But I, for one, cannot rate it. This is why we invented the fixed point in time rating. And who knows, this may be the last one I ever give.
Maybe. Wow. Okay. You went there. Yeah, I'm actually going to just be positive about it while acknowledging all those flaws. I think this is a Dalek. I don't think it is a Viscount banger, as tempting as it was to give it. Because again, there are so many obvious flaws. I mean, I honestly don't think we've harped on the gel creatures enough, but I won't. It's again not the best story. Omega is very one note. He's arguably way too over the top. It's really a shame Hartnell's kind of barely in it. But it's fast paced, and the interplay between the two really there doctors, Pertwee and Troughton, is great. And it's super, super memorable for moments like the one you just talked about. And everything that, with Joe talking about the Beatles, with Benton and the Brigadier coming in, getting his exile lifted, seeing the Time Lords again. There's just so much here. And it's actually, I would say it's just the right length for Classic Who. Obviously, all Classic Who is kind of too long, but 4 episodes, okay, it did not overstay its welcome. Just when you're starting to think, oh, I am really enjoying seeing these doctors interplay with each other, Patrick Troughton has to go and he fades away, and you're like, oh, that was nice, wasn't it? That was a nice adventure. All right, let's go back to other regular Doctor Who's. So yeah, it's a Dalek.
Interesting. Well, a Dalek fixed point in time hybrid. That's ultimate result. I don't know if we have one of those yet. That'll be interesting to see where it lands in the final rankings. But yeah, I'm happy with that outcome. Like, I think conceptually it's a Dalek. Like the boxes that it ticks makes it a Dalek. I think in execution, a lot of it not the show's fault. It's that's what makes it a fixed point in time for me. Like the execution, like it just drags. If on a rewatch, like at the time I would have said Dalek. At the time I might even have said Viscount Banger in 1981. But yeah, right now, if it hadn't been for the French subtitles, I would not have had that great a time watching this.
All right, folks, you heard our rating. It is time for you to rate it. If you are on Spotify, go to your app, go to the poll feature on this episode, and you will be able to rate the 3 doctors however you like. Do you agree with Chris? This is a fixed point in time. Do you agree with me that it's a Dalek? Do you have some other rating you would like to give it, or perhaps a write-in rating on the Q&A, also on Spotify? Go ahead. Vote now. Vote often. And
polls are open. If you're in line, stay in line.
You betcha. Let's move on to what we're doing next. And to do that, we're going to have to activate a little device we like to call the randomizer.
That's
Randomizer,
right,
of course.
materializing on our console in front of us right now. The Time Lords, the Seigneur de Temple, have given it back to us. I have knowledge of how the randomizer works. There's a codex. Pete has it. It's all the Doctor Who stories in sequential order. And Pete, I believe we've hit a milestone on this most milestone of episodes, on this milestone day. How many stories has Pull to Open left to visit?
We have, until tonight, only 199 stories left to do.
That's right. For the first time, we are in the ones. We were in the 100s. It remains to be seen how long it will take us to get back there. Because yes, as you say, as soon as Star Beast goes up, and as soon actually as we determine that it's not enough of an ongoing story to make all three a single story, which I think is pretty clear that they're probably not going to be that.
Yeah.
Then that'll bump it straight up to 200.
We're going to bob up and down the 200 mark a little bit here, probably.
It's going to feel pretty timey-wimey. We're going to be caught in a chronic hysteresis. So we just need to do it a little bit faster. Okay, exactly. So doing it a little bit faster on random.org, which is how I choose which of those 199 ones we go next. Random.org relies on matter and antimatter and recorders bouncing around in the atmosphere. Or alternatively, just atmospheric noise itself, thanks to a very Professor Tyler-like figure at the University of Dublin, who invented it, Trinity College Dublin. Thanks for that. So it's better than actual computers for creating a random number because they just rely on algorithms, not truly random. Now, we also like to issue challenges to the randomizer, and I'm going to give mine first, which is... I'll give it two choices, okay? Obviously I'm really interested in the Beatles connection. So maybe give us more Beatles. Maybe we'll get the chase. Maybe something else with the Beatles reference in it. Or give us a multi-Doctor story. We've done so many. We've done so many around this era, right? If you consider the War Games a multi-Doctor story, if you consider those sketches of other Doctors, multiple Doctors, that might be a multi-Doctor story. So, I'm going to include regeneration stories in that, of which we've done quite a few. That's my challenge.
That's good. I'm going to say, because Omega, as kind of fun as he kind of is to look at with the mask, and you can appreciate as over the top as the performance is, just the lines that he delivers. That said, it's not that interesting a villain. So take us to something where the bad guys are interesting, whether the monster or the villain. There's some layers to it. Give me some good monsters, not just that they look good, but like, are they interesting? Give me some interesting bad guys. Randomizer. That's what I'd like.
All right, I think we append a please to the randomizer at the end of every request, because otherwise, oh my goodness, the things it's given us in the past.
It could give us the wrath. We'll see. Are you ready for the countdown?
The randomizer, yes, will be unleashed in
4, 3, 2, 1.
Run, you clever boy.
64.
64.
We're still in round 2.
We are, but we are at Nightmare of Eden. Whoa.
Bob Baker, Dave Martin.
No, actually just Bob Baker.
Just Bob Baker. Okay, yeah. Yes.
There's your connection, Randomizer. Boom. It's the only story he did without Dave Martin.
That's so fun. The Randomizer really does listen to the whole podcast, doesn't it?
Yeah. I know.
This must be the first podcast we've ever mentioned Nightmare in Eden.
You're probably right.
And there it looks. We're going to be very careful about other stories that we reference. All right. Back to the Tom Baker era.
It's going to be great. Folks, thanks for listening. This is Pull to Open. It is a podcast. That podcast is a great thing to subscribe to or follow in whatever app you're in. So please do that if you haven't already. Follow us on social at Pull to Open 63 on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and various other places. TikTok and Blue Sky, we are Pull to Open. Don't forget to leave a review or perhaps a emoji title. Thank you, Martin West, as ever, for our music. And we'll see you next time for the Nightmare. No, it's just Nightmare.
It's just Nightmare of Eden.
You betcha.
And yes, we will see you with the Fourth Doctor in a very Douglas Adams kind of situation on an interstellar cruise ship. Looking forward to it. I haven't seen this one, so it's going to be fun. See you there, guys.
Take care, folks.